Liftoff and the clock has started.
This is Timeless Spirituality. Enjoy each and every time.
Well, hello there, everyone. I'm Daniel, the Past Life Regressionist, and this is episode number 6 of Timeless Spirituality. Today's episode, how do I put it? There's that way. Okay. What happens after the body? What happens after we leave the body? Where do we go after we leave the body? That is the question that is pondered today. I don't know, to be honest with you, where we go. I have my thoughts and theories, which you'll hear some of them. But today is about pondering that question. What happens when you leave the body? Anna and Chris and Anna, welcome to Timeless Spirituality. How are you guys doing today?
Great. How are you, Daniel?
I am excited for this one.
Yeah, no, I'm great too. And I am also excited to be here today. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you guys for being here. I love your flavor. I love your style. And I think you guys are the perfect blend for this conversation. I want to give a shout out to my mom for this one, actually, because my mom said to me, where do we go when we die? That's what I want to hear. I want to hear a conversation on that. I said, well, Mom, I'd love to do that. It'd be theoretical. She's like, that's what I want to know. I want to know where you go when you die. So yeah. And we had the schedule for today. And I thought, okay, let's switch out the other topic. And this one will be perfect with you guys. So thank you, Mom.
Awesome. Yeah. Ever since you sent that question, I've been like, oh God, I've done this work before in a lot of ways. Like I've gone and explored it, but I've been doing some deep diving when I've been going to sleep in particular. And it's really interesting. So I'm excited to talk about it for sure.
Thanks, Mom. Okay, so my first question.
Thanks, Daniel's mom. Sorry, I should say that. Sorry, there was a little lag there. Sorry, go ahead.
All good. Okay, so my first question for you guys is about your favorite song that has to do with time. Let's go. I'm thinking out of a bag. Anna.
I love that song and I can't sing very well. I can't sing at all, actually, not even very well. That goes, time is on my side. Yes, it is. How does that song go? You know what I'm talking about? Rolling Stones. Daniel's just giving me really dirty looks here. No, just kidding. Yeah, time is on my side. That's my favorite song because I think that time is an illusion and it's an illusion for our growth and our lives are here for our growth. And it's all on our side, whether it looks like it or not. It's ultimately just a big game and it's on our side. So
it's funny. Every time I think of that song, I think of that movie with Denzel Washington in it. Lord, if I can remember what it was, but it was this really creepy thing where this demon, whenever he used to travel from body to body, would sing that. And that's how you knew where the demon was. So like, I hear that song and I just think of demons. So it's, good conditioning there, I guess, maybe, but weird conditioning, maybe not good conditioning.
It's those moments I find myself without anything on the tip of my tongue, anything quick and witty.
I was like, thanks, Kristina, for bringing up that really ridiculous illusion that nobody knows.
I know what movie you're talking about.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, Denzel Washington. There was a demon. Yeah, and it walked from body to body.
Yep.
Training Day?
No.
Not quite that one. No, not even. Yeah, it was old. It was old school. I just aged myself there.
It was called Fallen.
Oh, thank you, Anna. Thank you. Would you like me to answer?
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good title for a movie like that.
It was good. I think it was, I think it's really interesting. Like one of the things that we talk about on our podcast occasionally is like the whole idea of an entity experience, entity attachment, right? And so I feel like there's some movies in the mainstream that kind of almost give you some hints that some of that stuff may be going on in real life. We think of it as fiction, but it also makes it familiar to us. So in case we do encounter something in which it feels real, we have an explanation for it that may seem crazy at first, but you can find people who will be like, no, this isn't crazy. Let me help you.
Okay, Chris, same question to you. What's your favorite song having to do with time?
Mine is actually not it. It's a song called Timekeeper by Grace Potter and the Nocturnals. I love it because I love the composition of the song. Like, I love the actual song so much, but I also love the idea of it. It's her basically pleading to the timekeeper to start over things again, to feel like she wants things to slow down. She wants things to start over. She wants assurance that she's going to be okay. Like, I really relate to a lot of those themes with time, because I think that time is like, if I were to be a polytheist, which I probably am, but like, if I were to be like a polytheist, time would be one of my gods. I really feel very much so that time is a constant. It's the thing that I kind of use to amp up any anxiety I have, or anything with ADHD, or like, oh my God, you haven't done this fast enough. This hasn't gone there. So I really appreciate the way that song treats time as something that you can plead with, right?
Well, thank you for sharing. So before we dive into where do we go when we die, I'd like you guys to just talk about your podcast a little bit, because I have a feeling that as everyone listens to you guys speak right now, they're going to be like, where can I find more of them? So I want you guys to talk about it right off the bat.
Yeah, I'll start talking then. So our podcast came from our own conversations that have just been happening as we've been best friends. We both became mothers in the last 10 years and found our own difficulties with it and our own joys and challenges. And we originally met at a meditation retreat. So we've always kind of had a, let's do something spiritual, but then it kind of quickly went from that one type of meditation to like, hey, let's look at this and let's do this. And this is fun, right? And so our whole relationship was formed off of this like mutual curiosity with all of the different mystical and amazing things that happen in the world and all the different ways that we can better ourselves as people, etc. And so it started off as like a text chain. And then eventually we figured out that people really liked to hear, like basically likes to hear what was on that text chain.
Yeah, basically, we are on a quest to basically get enlightened as the days of Buddha, 2,000 years ago. A monk would go into the hills of a cave in Tibet and meditate to try to get enlightened. And here we are, quote unquote, householders, living a life where we balance, being a wife and a mother and working. How can we come out of human suffering? How can we follow the teachings of the Buddha in this modern day? And we're willing to try any possible technique to do that. And we believe that we are actually already enlightened, but what kind of blinds us to our true essence is shadows. So we talk about lots of different shadow work, how you can remove the shadow. We treat past life regression on our show as a shadow work process. It's not a novelty for entertainment for us. It's like how can I take off yet another layer of ignorance? How can I take off another layer of anger? How can I look deeper and understand with more wisdom and love and forgiveness the current situation? So we treat a lot of these practices, and we're willing to try, any religion, any practice, any theory, and we take very large concepts from, say, A Course in Miracles or the Dhammapada, which is the teaching of the Buddha, or whatever. We're willing to try anything and apply it to our daily life. And then we share with our listeners like how we took this very deep, almost undigestible theory and how did we apply it to our own life when we got pissed because the dishes weren't washed, stuff like that.
So basically you're saying the stuff that really matters.
Yeah. Like, how can we take this ancient, timeless wisdom and use it to transform our own life when, say, our husband forgets to take out the trash? You know what I mean? Like the everyday small things is where this work needs to be applied, not in the hills of Tibet.
And yeah, and you could also think of it as yoga off the mat, right? As opposed to just like, hey, this is how you do yoga. It's like, how do you do it off the mat? But we also have fun with conversations about fairies and ghosts and all that kind of
all
stuff
that
too, because that's part of it, right?
And I think one thing about the podcast, which is one of the most important things, is the name of the podcast is This Spiritual Fix. And it's a play on words because, we're addicted to the spiritual fix. We're addicted to those highs that come with insight. We're addicted to the fix of spiritual highs. And then it's also a joke, a play on words, because there is nothing actually to fix. Like as we uncover deeper parts of ourselves, we realize there is just more of us to love. There are not parts of us to fix. There are not parts of us to banish. There are parts of us to wake up and recognize and then love. And in loving them, we transform them and set them free. So instead, like we did a whole series on the primal wounds in our first season. And ultimately, that teaching was, regardless of what your primal wound may be, injustice, betrayal, rejection, humiliation, or abandonment, let's not take that inner child that feels abandoned and put her in a corner. Let's just wrap her up and hug her and be like, look how cute I am. Look how cute my codependency can be. Look how fucking traumatized I am. Isn't that cute? Just love that part of us, instead of what I think our traditional punitive culture does, which is, let's throw out what we don't like.
So everyone, hit pause right now and go subscribe to this spiritual fix.
Thanks, Daniel.
All right, so now the big question, where do we go when we die? I want to say right now, from where I'm sitting, I'm going to be speaking in theoreticals and my own observations from my own past life regressions, the past life regressions of my clients, things that I've read, and just thoughts that I've put together in the totality of all of those. So that's where I'm speaking from. I don't know about you guys. Maybe you guys have the magic ingredient, but I just wanted to make it clear to everyone, that's where I'm speaking from. It's just not a place of an absolute knowing. It's just what I believe it could be. How do you guys feel about that?
I'm all about it.
Yeah, I'm all about it. And I'm sure there's a lot of overlap.
It's fun to explore it, right? Both theoretically and based on anecdotally and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I haven't had a near-death experience as far as I know in this life. I think Anna may have had something close. But yeah, so let's go. Let's dive in.
All right. So I started with Anna on the time question. So Chris, where do we go when we die?
One of the things that I've been meditating about in the last couple of days about this is I've been looking very closely at the moment of death. So I've been in a room with one person where they were very close to and heard a lot of people's descriptions of what it's like to have someone pass. And when I asked this question in meditation last night as I was going to sleep, I was given what I can consider was a preview, right? It felt kind of like a preview. And it was amazing how it felt very much so like going to sleep. But have you ever had those experiences where you like go to sleep and then something's happening and then all of a sudden you like jolt awake for whatever reason? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Part of me thinks, and this is the insight that I got, right, was that like it was like going to sleep and then all of a sudden you're right on the precipice of going to sleep forever. And then you kind of jolt yourself into it. So it's almost like sometimes sleep is this resistless experience that mimics the experience of death. And in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they say that lucid dreaming is one of the best ways to be able to navigate the afterlife because it most mimics the experience of it. So if you can learn to lucid dream in life and actually know and be aware that you're dreaming, then you're actually able to be more intentional after you leave your body. But that aside, from what I've seen transitioning spirits and what I've experienced and talked with people about is that basically as the spirit passes through portals that exist all over the world and through portals that get created right after someone's died. So it's a very kind of apocryphal story of like they missed the gateway, but that's actually accurate in my experience. And you go through it and then you go through a sort of sorting hat procedure, right? In the sense of that the whole past life, like I'm going to look at how my life went. I'm going to do a review and then I'm going to see where my frequency ended up. And I'm going to guess where I should go, right? In terms of like the heavenly worlds, in terms of like, talking about Dante's 9 levels of, is it 9 levels? Oh my gosh. This is my brain. All of Dante's levels of hell, there's also the levels of heaven, and then there's the neutral places as well. And so you kind of make a guess, and you're like, I think I belong here. And then if you do belong there, then you get to just sail right in. And if you don't belong there, then you kind of bounce off and you have to try again so you find the right place. And then you have an experience of rest. And then you start gearing up for your next life where you're like, okay, got to find my parents, got to find the place. What are the lessons I have to learn? How can I best suit my life and set it up so that I can actually go into the next life?
So I'm curious, when you said where you kind of go for it but don't make it and you bounce back, what do you mean when you say bounce back?
So when we die, right, there's this experience of the ego that kept the body alive. It's like a resonance form, right? It's like attached to your aura. You lose a lot of it, obviously, when you lose your body, but there's still some ego, and the ego is always projecting an image of itself. And so sometimes there's a disparity between the ego that is residual at this decision point and the reality of where you're actually resonating. So if there's a big disparity between the projection and reality, then basically, and you try and go towards where the ego is thinking you are, you just won't be allowed entrance. Like there's just a gatekeeper that's like, no, try again. And I know that there's something involved in all that experience of choosing. I'm super oversimplifying this, but that's my experience. And I've seen it happen from afar a couple of different times, where the disparity between where you think you may be, even if it's lower than where you actually are, those are all considerations.
Anna?
I listened to a great podcast called Where Is My Mind? And in it, he interviewed people who had had near-death experiences and a lot of research on near-death experiences. And I want to talk about just quickly what they found with those studies and then my own personal belief. They find that in 45% of people who have had a near-death experience, 45% are having an out-of-body experience where they actually leave the body. And of those, approximately a third, or 14% of people with near-death experiences talk about something called the 360 life review. In the 360-degree life review, what happens is you quickly see from birth until the moment of death, all the decisions that you've made, which have affected you. But the 360 is you then see how the decisions you made affected every single person in relationship to them. For example, let's say when you were in 5th grade, you passed a note to a friend gossiping about someone. And you see the feelings that were hurt by that person or the disappointment in the teacher's eyes. But it's not just the bad things. It's also the good things. You know, let's say you gave a homeless person $2. You get to see from their point of view how it felt to go buy a hot cup of coffee or whatever it was. So it's like you get to see the whole domino effect of every decision that you've ever made. And yes, only a small percentage. Well, you could say it's large. 14% is quite large, actually. But let's say it's a small percentage that actually remember it. And I do believe everyone has it. They just can't all recall it. Recollection and experience are different. But I do believe that that's something that instantly happens when we die, is we do get to experience the 360 life review. So I think that's one of the first things that happens when we die, is we get to kind of inventory our life and the lessons we learned and whether or not we accomplish certain goals that we set. And there's a great book called Lives Between Lives. And he talks in that book about people who have, through hypnosis, gone to this place in between lives. And I've been there too during past life regressions, where I've gone to this place where it's kind of like you're not in your body. I wouldn't necessarily call it heaven. It feels more like a conference room. It feels more like a meeting setting where you basically discuss the goals that you had. Did you achieve them? And in this book, Life Between Lives, you get to sync up with people that they call them your soul partners. So they're people that you come into your life over and over and over again with basically the same kind of clan of groups of people to learn certain lessons with them. And I know from my own experience doing past life regression that in one lifetime, my sister was my husband and I cheated on her. And we had a lot of tension in our childhood. We're now best friends, but we had a lot of friction growing up. And I believe it's because we have been soul partners coming in and out of our lives. And in some of our lives, we've I've played the villain and she's played the villain in other lives. And it's kind of like, as our shaman says, you hire your teachers. So I think in our soul clan, we decide like, what lesson does my soul need to learn to gain maturity, or what do I want to learn? And who's going to sign up to play the villain for me? Or, because I've also seen in other lives, like my younger brother in this life was my older brother in a previous life. And my husband and I, we were married in a previous life. And he was told, not through a regression, but through a psychic, that in a previous life, we were Roman soldiers and I stabbed him in the back, So there are people that we come into our lives with to learn lessons. And I think that ultimately that's one of the places we go when we die. We experience a 360 life review. We return to source and we kind of do an inventory of basically, like we could call it your peer review if you're in college, or let's say you're in school and it's ready. You're in 1st grade, you graduated, and then you have a conference call with the teacher and your parents and you're like, okay, you ready for 2nd grade? Should we go back to 1st grade again? I think it's something like that. And ultimately, I mean, this is just different stages of reality, because I think that there are multiple dimensions of reality. There is apparent truth, which is the truth that it appears to be real. This table is real. I'm talking to Daniel and Kristina. There's a microphone in front of me. There's subtle truth, which is, here I am, the third born child, a Leo who has an abandonment wound, speaking to this guy who has this going on, and her having this. And then there's other layers of truth and other layers of truth. And one of those layers of truth is, hey, we're all in a soul clan together, and we're here on earth, hanging out, having a podcast to share our truth with the world. And on another level, we are all just one, and there is just one of us, and it's that omnipotent truth, right? So there's just so many different layers of truth. And I think when you die, you get to decide which dimension of truth do you want to go to. And ultimately, we are all one.
Damn. That was good. Chris, any thoughts?
Nope, I'm good. She's got it.
Awesome. All right, so my next question for you guys, how do you feel that the process of being out of the body takes place?
Well, I think we have different layers of being. We have emotional body, the mental body, the soul body, the spiritual body. I don't know how many bodies we have, but I feel like we have multiple layers of existence. So when we dream, one of those leaves. When we die, they all leave, except for the physical body, right? So I don't know enough about it. I can't pick it all apart and tease it all out, but my intuitive feeling to it is that I have many layers. And when I die, the physical body comes off. And so it's an incredible feeling of lightness to not be stuck in form and stuck in gravity. So there's that. But I do believe that we all experience a level of that when we sleep. You know, in the Kabbalah, they say that when you sleep, you are 60, I think it's something like you are 60% dead. I don't know the statistics. I think it's 60%. And there's other science that has since gone on to validate that sleep is 60% similar to death, something like this. I don't have my facts straight, but I think, yeah, when we sleep, we get a taste of it.
Yeah. And I like to think of it like there's this thing called mycelium, and mushrooms come from mycelium, right? And they do all this amazing research on mycelium because in large old growth forests, mycelium is literally the banking system, the transportation system, the hospital system, and all of these different things, right? Because the mycelium basically acts as these runner networks so that if one tree is sick, other trees and plants around it can send it nutrients through the soil, through this mycelial network. And then mushrooms, fungus in general, breaks down rocks, right, to get the minerals out of it. So it can also serve as a bank. So in exchange for something that a tree gives it, the mycelial network will give the tree something in exchange, right? Our whole world is kind of like this, right? And as we, like, what I see is like the web of humanity. And when we say we're all one, everyone's like, I don't understand how we're all one, because you're you, and I don't know what it's like to be Daniel. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. My dog. He uses I'm so sorry. So, you know, we all have this perception, you know, in the mycelial network, basically there are fruit, and those fruit are the mushrooms that we see on the surface. All of us have the understanding of being the mushroom, right? Like, because we're like, oh, I'm born. I have this life as this mushroom, but actually there's this whole network that's going on underneath the soil. And so the bodies are our way of trying to figure out how big we are. Because like our emotional bodies are technically our bodies. Like we have a layer of it that's like an overlay on top of our bodies, but we also have, there's an emotional plane which just connects onto everybody else's emotional plane, if you know what I'm saying. Like kind of like an emotional world that is never ending. We have stuff that we consider ours, but it's actually everyone's, right? It's just, it has a boundary, and that boundary changes when our perception changes. So depending on how big you want to feel on any given day, you can just be the mushroom, or you can be the network underneath it, or you can be a foot of the network underneath it. And as we keep unblocking ourselves, and that radius around that one mushroom starts to expand, and then all of a sudden the major realization is when you start to become all the other mushrooms that have popped up too, right? Like, but until then, we're good with being the mushroom and the network that gets underneath the soil that no one can see.
All right, let's talk about the network right now. And with that, I believe that this is the perfect time to talk about the selection process for your next incarnation. So how do you guys feel that transpires?
Well, I think it's all perfectly, divinely perfect. I mean, there's nothing that can happen outside the realm of God that isn't already perfect. So I think we have the illusion of choice maybe, but I think we've decided this long ago where we're going next. And I don't know. I think we go and we chit chat with our elders or our angels or whoever you want to talk about in that life between life place. And we just decide what's going to be the best fit for the next life. What lessons are we looking at? What lessons do I need to learn? And I think ultimately the details like country, religion, gender, class, wealth, all those things are going to line up perfectly for you to learn the lesson that you need to learn. But the decision isn't made, oh, I want to be an Egyptian in my next life. No, it's not like that. Oh, I want to be in Hollywood in my next life. It's not that. It's what are the lessons I'm trying to learn? Tony Robbins says that the human soul has two desires, contribution and growth. So if we look at it from that angle, what does your soul want to contribute to the world? How does your soul or you need to grow to be able to be what you want to be or to be able to contribute what you want to contribute? So I believe when we're up there in the sorting hat chamber, or whatever you want to call it, the decision of which incarnation we're going to take place next is driven by those two questions. How will this help me grow? How will this help me contribute? Then the details work themselves out, whether I grow up in Somalia, Mexico, Mars, Venus, Tibet. That is kind of inconsequential. The point is, what are the connections I'm making? What are the contributions I'm making? And what is the growth that is taking place for my soul?
Yeah. And to kind of add to that, there's this really interesting concept about different timelines that any individual can kind of go on in their life. And there's this idea that like, if you are currently existing as, I'll use myself as an example, as a woman living in rural Georgia who has a job as this, like my ability to have myself living in Mongolia for however long, it's kind of a really far frequency away. Like this one man who's a Russian philosopher basically says that it's like in a different sector. It's just in a whole different area. So like my ability to change my future or to manifest something is limited by kind of what's close by. Right? Because for one thing, it's a limitation of my own imagination. Like I can't possibly imagine or know what it would feel like to be in that situation. But then it's also not necessarily for my best and highest good to go into a totally different sector because then you don't even know what can happen. And I think it's very similar to what Anna says in terms of like, we say that we choose our parents, we say that we choose our things, but like these soul groups that we're growing up with through all these different lives, we like having people who are familiar, but it doesn't necessarily benefit us to go really, really far away from that. Like, it's kind of like it's in a totally different sector. So my point being that the selection process is definitely based on lessons and also based on this understanding of you kind of go with what's familiar to a certain extent, right? And that means that for one thing, you get to fulfill all the kind of karmic cycles that have started with these people, and not go off and start it with other people. Because if we're saying that it's all a network and we're all one, then it doesn't matter if you're doing the drama with this group of people or this group of people in this totally different area, right? Because it's always going to be the same drama and they're just going to all be hired for their specific purpose to help you learn your lessons.
I think you guys are going to detest me. They're going to think I'm cool in a second, or a combination of both of those, maybe some other words too. I want to go ahead and share an experience with you guys that I had for myself when I went through a past life regression. This was about 3 years ago.
Yeah,
so,
baby, bring it.
I did a life between lives regression, which for everyone listening, it's not the method that I utilize, because life between lives is where you go through the past life regression process of seeing your past lives, and then you're taken to the other side to see the life review and everything that you guys mentioned before. Yeah, you guys summed it up really well, so I'm just going to leave it at that. And then jump to the part where I went through the selection process for myself for this current incarnation. And what I saw was, and I'm not saying this is the way that is, this was just the way that it was projected to me. It was like I was walking into a room with a bunch of old computers from the 60s. Those big computer banks that fill up an entire room. Yet there was this blue hue to the room. And I could feel this presence sitting in a chair, maybe more like a stool. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. And it felt like an old grumpy presence. This presence had just been sitting there for a very long time, just yelling, next, next, next. Take your pick. So on a computer monitor, I saw about 9 different lines, each with a life on them. One life was mine, which my current incarnation, which was the second from the bottom. And then there were other lives that were scattered around the planet. And in a linear time sense, my date of birth spanned about, I want to say it was about 18 years or so. I believe that one of them was in 78 or 79. And then one was like in 95 or 96. And then the others were in between. Remember, that's just in a linear time sense.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at the list, it was like I had an inherent knowing of what lessons would come along with that life. And one, for example, was a life where I was a dud. I was a real dud. I was living in England in that life. There was another life where I could have been a German psychologist, working on wounds having to do with the heart and living it up at the same time. There was another life that was a life somewhere, I believe, in the Andes, where I think it was going to be more about just meditating. Then there was the life in Texas of someone who was going to have a rapid transformation throughout. It felt like the first 30 years of life, going from one set of beliefs to another. Then there was a horrible life, I believe it was in Thailand, where life was going to be brutal for about the first 30 years. And then things would just lighten up a bit. Then there was my life, which was second from the bottom. And I chose my life, naturally, because I'm here talking to you right now. But they all had a different flavor to them. But I can also see from my belief in what I believe I know about my past lives that I can see the lessons in every single one of them in a karmic sense and what needed to be fulfilled. Now, sure, there was some overlap there where I can accomplish some of those things from the German life. Probably not the English one because I'm not much of a dud. I mean, I do have my moments, but for the most part, I think I'm okay. Granted, that's just what I think when I look in the mirror. Who knows what other people think? Sorry, there's my tangent. Yeah, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah, the lives. So they all had their own flavor and they all had their own time of birth. Now, I believe in astrology. So I believe in astrological configurations and that they dictate what our properties for our essence are going to be. And that's what this screen almost felt like also, is that it was based off of astrological configurations.
They were your codes.
Exactly. But they were all different. I had a choice which life I was going to choose. Now, look, I believe in soul groups too. I don't believe it's as simplistic as it's presented. And I know that sounds like an asinine thing for me to say, this simplistic concept of soul groups. But I don't think that it's as simple as we may believe it is, because I think about that computer monitor and thinking how if I have a soul group that's relegated to this incarnation right now and those 10 or 15 individuals or whatever it may be that I will encounter in this incarnation. Because I think one of you guys brought up, it's about, I think it was Chris, about your geographical location and how you can't accomplish in Mongolia what you're accomplishing in rural Georgia. And if I was living that life in Thailand, would I have the opportunity to interact with the people who I believe to be in my soul group as my incarnation is Daniel? Would I ever cross paths with them? I don't know. And same thing with that person in the Andes. Now, I'm sure that life in the Andes would have had his own soul group. Probably would never interact with me or the other people in my incarnation soul group. Would that mean that it's a possibility that it goes broader? Or that maybe we do have soul groups, but we may switch between the core group and that we're kind of just rolling with whatever may come and how karma may present itself and that they will still sign up to fulfill these roles, but it may not be as simplistic as we believe that it is. Mm-hmm. And then one last thing for it. I cannot rule out the possibility that I'm simultaneously living in all of those incarnations as well.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, they're all you anyways.
They're all you, and you just chose your primary consciousness. So basically, you're all living in those people, and it's not like those people are brain dead. It's just that your oversoul has the most, like oversoul being like the governing thing over all those lives, right? That oversoul just has an understanding of its primary consciousness, which is you.
Right. And then the other possibility still is in a three-dimensional sense, maybe I'm living in all of those incarnations, or maybe those are incarnations in alternate timelines. And then maybe my soul group in those alternate timelines may be rolling with me in those alternate timelines. So we all kind of walk together. Or, I mean, I think it's, you know what I mean? That it may not be as simplistic as it's presented when someone stands up at a chalkboard and says, this is a soul group.
Right. I think our soul groups might be much larger than we think.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also believe that ultimately, like I was saying before, there's just one of us. And there's really just one of us jumping around from one body to another. So actually our soul group they're all just us. There's that too. And I had a really interesting experience when I was first getting into past life regression. I was actually in Israel soon after, and I was walking down the street near the Wailing Wall. And I was thinking about how are we really just all just one? What if we were all just reincarnated? It was just one of us reincarnating over and over and over again. And time and illusion body made it look like there were many of us, but it was really just one. And that's one of the meanings behind there's only one of us. And as I had this thought, this little Muslim girl looked up at me with the most beautiful big eyes, and she just smiled at me, and it pierced me to my soul. And it was like she was looking at me and she said, "That's right. It's just one of us." That was the feeling I got. That was a very powerful moment for me when we met eyes. And I still remember that. And I feel like, yeah, ultimately, yeah, our soul group might be 5 people, might be 1 million people. It might be how many people are on the planet right now? 10 billion or whatever, 14 billion. It's just one.
Maybe in your other timeline, there are 14 billion people and we don't want to be in that timeline, but hopefully.
Well, I don't know. I'm bad at math with that, but you know what I mean.
I think we're hovering around 7.8 billion.
Yeah, seven.
Or one.
I think I'm thinking of India, which is 1.4 billion. But anyways, yeah, you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. I think it's much more expansive than we can even possibly comprehend. When you present the notion of us being one, and then there are people who believe that we are separate, I believe the two can coexist at the same time. That just because we have a perception of it being separate, why can't it be that we're individuals having an individual experience while being part of a collective oneness? Because it's just our perception of the way that things are.
Right. It's just perception. And that's what I was trying to say earlier about there's different levels of truth. And on the apparent level, we are very different. I'm not going to pretend like we aren't, because I'm not going to go take withdrawals out of your bank account, for example. We're very much separate beings. But ultimately, and we don't live there right now, we are one.
We have our moments, right?
I think this next question still is going to be a complete hypothetical. In a linear time sense, how long do you feel that it is before we incarnate into our next body in a linear time sense?
I believe that it's as soon as you want it to be. And I believe that my last one was actually right away, because I know the last person I was before I died and came into this life. And I died in October of 1978 in that life. And I was born in August of 1979 in this life. And it's exactly 40 weeks. And I was born on my due date. So I believe in that case, I mean, I can't say for everyone if that's the case, but seeing as I knew who I was last time and I know the death date, I could easily see that, yes, it was 40 weeks. And it was an event that took place historically. So I was able to double check the death date. So it's not just like I came to the death date in a regression, and it is exactly 40 weeks later. So in my case, at least, I got out of that body and I'm like, I want right back in.
There are also Buddhist teachings, I want to say. I want to say that they're like Tibetan Buddhist teachings that talk about how the material of the spirit is such that it naturally pushes directly into another incarnation. It goes into the time with no time, but that in terms of the karmic experience, going again to the Buddhist thing of having sankharas and having all these different kind of accumulated experiences and sensations that you've just accumulated in your body, that the natural thing is just to put you directly into another body. When I've done past life dates, I've had it where it's 2 to 3 years, and I've had it where it's 40 weeks. So I've done 2 specifically. So that was 2 to 3 years. And then the other one was, again, not quite 40 weeks in the same way, but it was within, from what I could pinpoint, 8 to 10 months.
Yeah, mine wasn't. I just looked at the date and I was to double check, and it wasn't 40 weeks. It was 37 weeks. So maybe my soul didn't go into the fetus till 3 weeks post inception, whatever. But yeah, more or less.
Boy, are we really going to go there right now?
Are we going to go into math? No.
Or conception dates when the soul enters the body. Let's not go there. Yeah.
Soul, body, Yeah. Maybe this is one of those crash and burn moments for me.
I was going to help you, but I was on mute, so I apologize. I made some terrible joke about conception and time birth. So Just pretend I made that joke because I can't even remember what it was, and we can carry on.
Okay. Yeah, for me, in a linear sense, I believe that it was about 8 or 9 years for me from my last incarnation. One of the focal points I use for that is the television show Roots, because I passed away as I was watching it. Of course, there were repeats of Roots.
You think you could have been like a SIDS baby or a miscarriage a couple times in between that you just don't remember? I mean, just curious.
Sure, I think it's possible.
Yeah, but we don't know.
I don't see why not. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the lives on the list, I think that was one of the ones I forgot, felt like it was a life that was very brief, where I think I may have made it to 2 in that life, I want to say. I mean, maybe there was some quick entries and exits. Maybe I covered a lot of ground in that time. I don't know. I think it's possible. But in terms of me having an awareness of it, it just may not have done anything for me. It wouldn't contribute to the shadows that I'm working on in this life for me to have that awareness of those sudden infant deaths. So
sometimes it's just karma for somebody else, right? That they have to experience. And I don't want to say that as if it's a deserved karma, but sometimes we don't know what gives us our lessons.
Exactly. And I mean, I think that's a whole other episode, which I definitely want to do. But I don't think karma is as black and white as we think it is. Or again, not maybe that we think it is, but that the general perception of karma may be that these things are always punishments.
Oh yeah, no, because karma is just action. The word literally obviously translated as action, but it's if you want to say it's Newton's first law, second law, that everything has an equal and opposite reaction, right? So every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So it's effectively an energetic transfer of energy, because energy can't be destroyed or created. And so you're just transferring and transmuting the energy into all these different things that then have to, you hit the billiard ball, and it has to hit something else until the energy can be transferred into something else, whether it's the pool table around it, the pocket that it lands in, or another ball.
So my final question for you guys is, when do you think it is that we stop incarnating?
Well, according to Buddhism, you become a non-returner when you reach ultimate self-realization, aka enlightenment. So I think that when you do become fully realized, you don't come back. No more lessons to learn. You won the game, you're done. So Buddha didn't come back, and, Neem Karoli Baba didn't come back. And unless they are coming back with this simple desire to help heal humanity, but they've already woken up completely. They've removed all those shadows like we were talking about in the beginning. So I think however long that takes, and I don't know if there's a magic number of lifetimes that is. I don't know. I think for some people it's faster and some people it's slower, and there's new souls and old souls and all that jazz. And I have no idea, but it seems that everything else I've learned from Buddha has shown itself to be true. So I'm going to believe in that one, that when you become fully self-realized, when you have dipped in nirvana, you are a non-returner.
And I'll use A Course in Miracles as my kind of idea of it, is that it's kind of very similar in the sense that it's like, oh, this is my second to last life. This is my whatever. But the Course in Miracles is a channel text from Jesus that was written in the 70s. And what they talk about is it's a process of basically becoming becoming sane, right? To basically forgive everything around you, because it's all a projection. It's all an illusion. And as soon as you can forgive everything, truly forgive it, see it as perfect, then your mind slowly but surely starts to regain its sense of reality, of the real reality, right? Of the unconditional love that we've never left. So it's very similar to the Matrix, right? Where you're, instead of sitting in a battery factory, you're actually sitting in the bosom of love, and you have to slowly wake up from it. In terms of the number of incarnations, it can take us a really long time, or it can't. But ultimately, the Course in Miracles says that everybody has to wake up. Everybody has to wake up. The dream doesn't end until it ends for everybody.
I'm almost at a loss for words for this conversation, but I'm not one to argue with ancient sacred texts. But when I hear a statement like that, and I know you didn't write it, so Anna, this is not a shot at you. It pisses me off when I hear them say, well, Buddha didn't come back. Well, how do you know that Buddha didn't come back? It's not you being you, Anna.
No. Buddha himself said it. It wasn't other people saying it. He himself said, I I think the exact quotes is something like, I now see who has been healing. I now see who has been building my house, my house. Oh, house builder, you will live no more. I will no longer incarnate. Because when he was able to see who was building his house, basically, what aspect of his ego was creating the body over and over and over again. He meant house, he meant the physical form. When he could finally see it, who it truly was, and it fell apart, he knew he would no longer incarnate.
Do you guys ever watch The Office?
I saw the British one. I never saw the English one, American one.
It kind of reminds me of the episode where Michael found himself in hot water financially, and he learned about bankruptcy and how he could declare it. And he just stood up and said, I declare bankruptcy. Is that the way that it works?
I have seen the house. No, I think in Buddha's case, it was different, but I don't know.
I'm not necessarily comparing Michael Scott to Buddha. But
yeah, but I appreciate the sentiments of both. I totally appreciate what you're saying, Daniel, in the sense that it kind of is like, well, that asshole over there is like, I don't have to do it anymore. And if you get into that whole, like, the first book I read on the Course in Miracles is literally the guy learns that he's in his second to last life. And I'm like, well, damn, like, I think I'm definitely not in my second to last life. Like, I'll do everything I can and work really hard, not work really hard, but I will love myself more and more completely every day so that I can do that. But I also really appreciate the fact that both the Course in Miracles and Buddhism, whatever you want to say, both of them are like, yo, it's up to you. There's no savior other than you.
I like that.
Yeah. And that's good.
I have a funny little anecdote that I heard once about reincarnation and all that. I'm going to tell you.
Oh, totally.
So these two monks, they come to meet a wise man, and I might be getting the story completely wrong. And they say to him, how many more lives do we have until we're enlightened, until we're non-returners? And the wise man points to the tree, and he says to the first guy, you see all the leaves in that tree? He goes, yeah. He goes, you have that many leaves left. For every leaf in that tree, you have that many lives left to live. And the man's like, fuck, you know? And then he says to the second one, and you see the orchard over here? And he goes, yeah. He goes, so in that orchard, for every one of those leaves on every one of those trees, that's how many lives that you have left. And he goes, really? And he goes, yeah. He goes, well, that's not that many at all. And poof, he was enlightened. So the joke was, it can actually be whenever. And the more detached you are from it, the closer you get.
You know, it's interesting because as you were saying that, I became aware of some of my triggers. Because I'm like, you know, it seems awfully convenient that it just happens to be as many leaves are on that tree is how many lives that person
Well,
has.
it's an anecdotal, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but it's me becoming aware of, why am I so triggered by these things? Why can't I just take it as it is? It's like, oh, it's just an anecdotal thing that she's saying right now. There's a point here where it's like, well, how does he know that it's that many leaves on the tree and that many lives? It's awfully convenient. Like, come on, what about the other tree? What if there's three less on that tree?
Are you a conspiracy theorist, Daniel? The past life conspiracy theorist? Just kidding.
I believe that I find myself somewhere in between all those.
Okay.
Which is, I always ask, how do you know? So for the people who are diehard conspiracy theorists who believe that they know what's going on, my question is, how do you know? For those people who are the furthest thing from a conspiracy theorist, my question is, how do you know?
Right.
Because
So
it's the
you're
difference between
skeptic, yeah.
believing and knowing. I do my best to operate from a set of beliefs instead of knowing. One other anecdote for me in there is, I believe that there are young souls and old souls. But something that bothers me is when I hear people say, oh, that person's just a young soul. Oh, they're just operating that way because they're a young soul. Oh, they're naive because they're a young soul. I believe that we have to go through every possible experience on this planet in order to obtain that level of soul growth or nirvana or whatever it may be. And I believe that the person that we perceive to be the youngest soul may be the oldest soul on the planet.
In disguise, right.
Because
Judas or whatever.
Well, I believe that it's possible that they may have gone through all the other lessons except for the one where they're like, I'm going to come down as someone who's really naive. And it just ended up getting kicked all the way to the end of the line So maybe last time they were Jesus, but Jesus just skipped the life where he was naive. And then he comes back as the most naive person in the world because it needs to be fulfilled. And then at that point, goes on and doesn't have to come back. So, I mean,
I love that.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a circular, the tarot, right, is like, has the major arcana, right, which is like 0 through 24. 0 is the full, 24 is the world. And it's actually not linear. It's actually circular. Just like you said, like the Jesus is like the 24 is like the world, but then goes straight into the Fool. And it can be said that the most advanced people that I've ever met are the most innocent, the most fool-like that there are, right? Because they don't take life as seriously as all the rest of us, for one thing. It's really true. And can I tell a funny story about that though? Like about people's lessons and like, oh, they're a young soul. One of our teachers tells a story about a man who was in a veterans hospital after he got hurt, and he had a near-death experience. And when he came back, he had some special abilities, right? He was able to heal people. And so at night, he would walk around the hospital randomly healing people in their gurneys because it was, he was like, oh, I'm going to do that, right? And he was going up to this one person, and the soul of this person jumped out of their body and was like, do not heal me. Do you know how many lives it took me to get onto this gurney right now? If you heal me, you will completely negate all of the effort that I did to get on this gurney. And it's always that story that I remember whenever I think of trying to heal somebody without their consent and like kind of going that direction. Cause I'm always just like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, we never know what it takes for you to get in the situation and the circumstances such that you can learn a very, very important lesson. And to stop somebody else's path, they could have spent lifetimes trying to get there. And you think you're being the benevolent person who's like helping them. It's just no good.
I love that. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I know I mentioned it earlier, but where can everyone find you?
Well, you can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're called This Spiritual Fix, or you can visit our website, www.thisspiritualfix.com.
Seriously, thank you guys so much for being here, and I can't wait to have you back.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for having us. We really appreciate it. We've enjoyed it.
Fellow time travelers, your journey through time awaits you. Just want to thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. And if you're interested in discovering who, when, and where you have been throughout time, and you'd like to book a session with me, just go ahead and send me a message on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist, or you can reach me through my website, yourpastliferegressionist.com.